Let me introduce Dr. Vaidas Petrulis from Kaunas, Lithuania, who will present his presentation, his introduction to the Kaunas European Heritage Label site.
First of all, hello to everyone, and thank you for inviting me to present Kaunas and to talk in such an important event for European Heritage Label. First of all, I have to introduce myself and my relation to Kaunas. We received the title of European Heritage Label in 2015, and we received it not for a museum or a special site, but for the whole city, for a specific period of a city, from 1990 to 1940. I will come back to this. So it makes our story a little bit different if to compare with our previous cases. And if to talk in terms of UNESCO, our site manager is Kaunas municipality, not like a special museum or a special organization. Myself, I am from Kaunas University of Technology. I am a historian of architecture, but involved in this process, all kind of processes from the beginning. So I can give a kind of a picture from outside to talk about the processes in Kaunas. And yes, for us it's very important that we are talking not about a specific site. Nevertheless, in European Heritage Label like nomination, we have 42 buildings, but anyway, we are talking about the whole city. And you can see that Kaunas is in the middle, just in the middle of Lithuania. And what is the story behind this, why we received this European Heritage Label, and what is the most important? Actually, the most important is the message that from World War I to World War II, roughly, Kaunas was a temporary capital of Lithuania. So because of the historical reasons, we lost our capital Vilnius to Poland. It was a part of Poland at that period. And we had to construct a new capital city. And yesterday we were talking about a lot about problematics of this period, about some difficult heritage sites, and from my point of view, Kaunas is one of the stories where we can tell this, let's say, rather dark period of European history when the borders were so fragile, where the political situation was so unstable, in a positive way. We lost Vilnius, but we created a new city, new capital. Of course, when I say created, it doesn't mean that we built Kaunas from the scratch. Probably it's a bit different situation if to compare with Gdynia, when the city appears from a small town of 5,000 people. In our case, we had a Russian fortress, and it's really interesting to hear the previous presentation about fortress in northern Italy. So the Russian Empire on his western side, we had like a series of fortresses, and Kaunas was among them. So what we have in this interwar period, we have a transformation which was provoked by the status of the capital city. So a lot of governmental institutions, educational institutions, business offices, housing, infrastructure of the city developed in, I would say, 15 years. Because if we talk about the history of that period, of course, the time from 1918 or 1919, when Kaunas becomes a temporary capital, to 1927 is, well, it's not so economic, there is no so economic potential to do something. So roughly the major changes in 1927 and ends, of course, in 1940. So in this very short period, you can see the transformation of the city from, and it is the best way to show the level of this process is, of course, by using pictures. And I chose a few pictures from the beginning of 20s. You can see how the city looked like, and in late 30s. So the transformation, I would say, was magic. So now in Kaunas we have around 6,000 buildings remain from that period. And actually, as you can see from this map, it's all around the city. So again, nevertheless, we were talking about 42, let's say, landmarks, which tells the story of temporary capital. For us, it's very important to include all the people who are somehow involved as inhabitants or visitors of the whole city. And here you can see the map of central part of Kaunas, and the green buildings, they are from interwar period, so you can see that you can find interwar architecture all around the city. So the first message is transformation. Another important aspect of Kaunas is the sense of temporariness. As already said, the consequence of this, one of the consequences, of course, is that we witnessing a dark period of European history, of instability. But in terms of architecture, we can see some positive aspects. And I have two messages here. First of all, because we were hoping to reclaim Vilnius back, it was somehow Kaunas people decided not to build parliament or all infrastructure, official infrastructure of the city. And instead of this, we have a city which was built by people, and the main asset of the whole story is about the housing, about infrastructure, not about the political buildings. And of course, another consequence was like encouraging to use some decorative elements of so-called national styles. So if you visit Kaunas, you can find a lot of ornamentation in modern architecture, as in case of Central Post Office, with this beautiful floor, which was inspired by the textile. And I will not go deep into the details, of course, but for those who are familiar with modern movement and Adolf Loos' concept that ornament is a crime, so in Kaunas, ornament is not a crime. So another important aspect of Kaunas that and our European dimension as well, it's the diversity of aesthetical expressions. And behind this diversity of architectural forms, there is a very important message, because in Kaunas we do not have a school of international level of modernism like a constructivism in Russia or Bauhaus in Germany. Instead of this, Lithuanian architects got education in very different places of Europe and then returned to Kaunas to create a capital. And yesterday we were talking about the polyphonic identities. And for me it was very nice concept to talk about our concept of modernism. We have a polyphonic modernism or even polyphonic architecture, because it's not necessarily only modernism. So again, I will not go deep into the details, architectural details, but when you walk around Kaunas, behind the corner you can find, of course, some stripped classicism. You can find some Germany-inspired Bauhaus architecture. You can find some Art Deco, or is not such phenomena as Art Deco in this period, but let's say inspired by United States. You can find some pieces of architecture which were inspired by Italian rationalism, because two of our very famous architects got education in Rome. So all together we have this polyphonic architecture and like diversity of that period. It is also very important when trying to describe Kaunas that in Kaunas we have a special relation with nature and architecture. And of course I will not go deep again into this message, but Kaunas is on the confluence of two rivers, Nemunas and Neris. And on the slope of these rivers we have beautiful building, the Resurrection Church, which I'm very proud is one of the symbols of our today's meeting. And again, this is one of the best examples of Stadtkrone, the crown of the city, and it's the concept of Brunotaut. Again, it's because of a relation of nature and city. And the last point, while describing why Kaunas is interesting and what you can expect, what you can find, and how we have to deal with this, is that we are talking, nevertheless, we have a Resurrection Church, post office, officers club, and some important landmarks, but we are talking more about different typologies of everyday architecture, not about monuments. And it's also really related with the concept of cultural heritage, which is not about preserving modern, not about preserving monuments, but preserving historic urban landscape. And in Kaunas, I will just go very fast with few pictures. You can find very diverse modern architecture in all the city. So it's our like heritage with which we have to work. And what is really important, that all these buildings are inhabited by people. So for us it's crucially important to have a strong heritage community. I always like the doors of Kaunas. We are not luxurious. We are not like in Brussels or Rome. But with simple doors, you can count hundreds of them. They are inspired by modern movement, and there is every unique design behind this makes the local spirit of the place. So this is briefly what we are talking about. And now, of course, what is the most important is activities. As already said, I am from academic field, so I will talk a little bit from outside, not from the municipality, but probably you know Andriana Filinaita and our from municipality, and our municipality, of course, we are really engaged in this process. And I think that it's very important that the year 2015 for Kaunas was when we got this European Heritage label. was important because municipality started to believe that interwar period architecture is good tool to tell the story of Kaunas, to tell where this identity of the city is. Of course, we have a layer from Middle Ages. Our city started on the confluence in 13th century. It's an old city. But somehow interwar becomes more and more important when we are trying to describe the role of Kaunas and identity. And I should say we started this process of dissemination, let's say so, in 2009 already, when in our University of Technology we created the Internet Archive, which is also available, some parts of this in English, on this interwar architecture based on archival researchers. And of course, different routes, and you can find this right now. Of course, social media was involved so much. But in 2050, municipality, and it was a project by university. And by the way, when talking about Kaunas, I think it's very important that the first time when we included into cultural heritage list interwar period architecture is as early as 1972. Who knows about the history of modern movement and how it becomes modernism? It was 40 years after these buildings it was built. It's one of the earliest examples, I would say, even in the world. So the process begins very early. And then every generation finds this layer of the city again and again. And of course, in 2050, Kaunas municipality involves, and it becomes very popular with guides in Lithuanian, English, and German. Now it's being translated in Polish, by the way. With excursions, what is really important, there is a web page of excurses. The young group of urban activists who makes like unofficial but very popular excursions inside the buildings. Here one of the picture from the fire station with such events as for example, the street festival of Putvinskio Street in May 2015, of course, where European Heritage Label is a part of this area. And for us, it's also very important that artistic interpretation is involved in the process of telling the narrative of the temporary capital and telling the story why it's important today. So, for example, very famous artistic Kaunas Biennial in 2017, it was dedicated to the topic of monument, and of course interwar period symbols such as Statue of Freedom became a part of this process. And also now we can see a lot of artistic reactions to this architecture, as for example Jewelry inspired by architecture by Grupo Celsius 2073, the young artists who make jewelry on the topic of this architecture. And of course, recently this phenomena becomes wider and wider involved in different activities. And one of our most recent activities is an international traveling exhibition, Architecture of Optimism, the Kaunas phenomenon, 1918-1940. Of course, it's not modernism, it's of that period. And we started this small traveling pavilion. We started this exhibition in UNESCO headquarters when we traveled to Rome, to Tallinn, to Wrocław. Now it's in Kaunas. Next month we travel to Brussels, and we don't have a schedule for the next year, but probably we will continue with this small exhibition. And my last message is that in 2022, Kaunas will be European capital of culture. And I'm really happy that the topic of modern movement is a part of the whole project of the Gold program, and we have a program, Modernism for the Future. And we started to work this year, and our response to European Year of Cultural Heritage, it was two big events. One of them was International Summer School, promoting the progressive modernism and its value as a historic urban landscape. We had teachers from Bartlett School of Architecture dealing with Kaunas, with different blocks, urban blocks of Kaunas architecture, with interdisciplinary teams, with sociologists, historians, architects, designers, and it was rather successful. From students were all over Europe, and we provided some concept drawings for the future of these blocks, and of course some international articles on Kaunas appears in Architecture Today and different other international media. And our last event was just last week, International Conference Modernism for the Future, which was held in Žalgiris Arena, and you can see some pictures from that conference. So here is the end of my presentation, and the main message is that in case of Kaunas, of course, the main body and the site manager is a municipality, and we work very dedicated. But what is the most important, I think, that this site involves very different operators, starting from university, European Capital of Culture, individual initiatives like excurses, and all this creates a kind of atmosphere where modern movement becomes, I would say, even it's a process of recent years, becomes very important part of city identity. And of course we are open for all cooperations, and if you have some ideas, you can contact Kaunas municipality, you can contact me, you can contact European Capital of Culture, and yeah, that's it. It was about Kaunas.
Thank you so much. And last but not least, I invite Mrs. Zsuzsanna Szijártó from Sopron. She will present a pan-European picnic memorial park as a EHL site.
Thank you very much. We are so delighted to be one of those 5 European Heritage Label sites that can be introduced today. First of all, let me introduce Dr. Christian Brummer, who is the head of the Mayor's Office in Sopron and also the European Heritage Label manager. My name is Zsuzsanna Szijártó, and I work as a press referent and for international relations in Sopron. First of all, I would like to talk a little bit about the Iron Curtain. It was a political, military, and ideological barrier erected by the Soviet Union after World War II to seal off itself and its dependent Eastern and Central European allies from open contact with the West and with other non-communist areas. The term Iron Curtain had been occasional and varied use as a metaphor since the 19th century, but it came to prominence only after it was used by the former British Prime Minister Winston Churchill in a speech at Fulton on the 5th of March in 1946. Communism is a political and economic doctrine that aims to replace private property and a profit-based economy with public ownership and communal control, at least of the major means of production, for example, the mills and the factories, and the national resources of a society. For Hungary, communism was a foreign and repressive system which broke Hungary's European development. During this time, the country was obsessed in political and military terms. This is why the regime change is so important for us, and the pan-European picnic is a symbolic point of terminating the oppression. In the late 1980s, it became even more difficult for the Soviet Union to keep their socialist system functioning, and the change became inevitable. In 1989, increasing numbers of East Germans fled, trusting that they would be able to reach West Germany by going through Hungary. It turned out not to be so simple. Although in May 1989, the first steps were taken to dismantle the Iron Curtain on the Austrian and Hungarian border, the Hungarian border police continued to detain those people who violated the border and even instituted controls at a greater distance from the actual border itself. The situation gave a special meaning to the initiative of the Hungarian opposition, which organized a happy meeting for the Hungarian and the Austrian citizens along the border in Sopron Puszta under the name of the Pan-European Picnic. So people came together for a real picnic, cooking meals, laughing, having a chat with each other. Minutes before the official program was set to begin at 3 p.m. on August in 1989, refugees from East Germany who had heard of the planned temporary opening of the border appeared at the site, abandoned their vehicles, and broke through the gate in the Iron Curtain with their bare hands only 3 minutes before the official program was set to begin. The Hungarian border police had been abandoned by their superiors and did not attempt to stop the refugees, which thus became the first truly spectacular action of the German reunification. The Pan-European Picnic and the breakthrough at the border became the symbol of the European unification. The scene of the historical event is now a popular tourist destination and a place of pilgrimage for the former East German refugees and their relatives. In 1991, a headboard was erected in the Memorial Park. In the same year, the park got a bell from the city of Debrecen. At the breakthrough point, a memorial was set up in 2004 with a memorial plaque describing the historical event. On the 20th anniversary in 2009, a sculpture composition was made by Miklós Meloko, who is a famous Hungarian sculptor. The Pan-European Picnic Memorial Park was awarded with the European Heritage Label in 2015. The Pan-European Memorial Park was getting more attention after the regime change. The site of the border crossing is still a very popular tourist destination. People from all around Europe and from all around the world come and visit the Memorial Park. Every year we remember the events of 1989, but we also put more emphasis on the big anniversaries. On the 20th and the 25th anniversaries, European politicians joined to the celebration, and hopefully it will be the same next year when the 30th anniversary of the Pan-European picnic will be celebrated. In the Pan-European Picnic Memorial Park, we are creating a tourist visitor center involving European Union resources. The construction is expected to begin in spring of 2019. We will create additional tourist attractions on site, and their preparation has also begun. We would like to commemorate the events not only in the Pan-European Picnic Memorial Park, but also in the city. So we are organizing a permanent exhibition in the city that will guide you through the historical events, the border crossing, and its effects. We are preparing for the 30th anniversary with a large series of programs, so we expect Europe's leading politicians to visit our city again. One of the most important tasks of the next period is to present the former events for young generations. We are trying to provide the opportunity to get to know Pan-European picnic's history, not only for Hungarians, but also for those youngsters who are from abroad. Therefore, we are contacting local and international organizations and locations. By publishing new books and publications, organizing exhibitions, and creating new attractions, we would like to make understandable for young people what exactly happened at that time and what are its consequences. A new website is also being developed where all the information can be easily and quickly found. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, not only for Zsuzsanna, but for all the guests who presented their sides. I would like to invite you here behind the table for a while, and I hope there are a lot of questions you would like to ask to our guests. Yes, please take a seat here.
If there are any questions, I will pass.
Are there any questions you would like to address to our guests? Maybe I will start the discussion from here. Are there any questions you would like to address to our guests concerning not only the sites but the challenges they face as a sites of heritage, European heritage label? I have the impression that we have even within those 5 presentations, we have covered the whole European history. Please notice that we have started from the Roman times, Caruntum, then early modern era, exemplified by Union of Lublin. Then we have the turn of the 19th and the 20th century, Fort Kadine, interwar period, exemplified by Kaunas, ending up in the collapse of communism and the collapse of Iron Curtain, and the real beginning of what is united Europe now. So we have a huge, or even the whole European history, which connects in my mind to the textbook Professor Konkolewski showed us yesterday, Europe, Our History. And it provokes me to ask about the issue of polyphonic history or polyphonic European heritage. Are we able to turn? There was also a kind of metaphor of a beautiful garden, a beautiful botanical garden where all the spices are represented, but this is just a show, just a garden. We have a collection of sites which are a kind of garden, a kind of places with their own history, their own meaning, their own activities. But are we able, or what shall we do to connect them into the one narrative, into the one polyphonic story, which will be the story about the Europeanness, about the European identity and European heritage? So this is the question. Except the very particular issues you are dealing with and challenges, and I hope that the next meeting with Mrs. Gloria Lorenzo Lerones will also introduce you a little bit more to the opportunities, real, particular and practical opportunities connected to the EHL label. I think that now it's a time to ask about these spiritual meanings and European narratives for the places. I don't know whether you have your impressions about this.
I can say something from my experience of the Dominican community. To tell the truth, the Dominican community was created in the medieval times, in the 13th century, and was the first order in which the democratic constitution was inserted. And the idea was to create the community of many people. Each one introduces something special for the community, and together with this garden, the garden of values of the persons, and this is the riches of the whole community. Yesterday we spoke about the difficulties, about the criteria, what site should be chosen for the European Heritage label. I know that this is very difficult. I think that each site should be something symbolic of the value of the European heritage. Something like this we can create this garden or this big community. It's not necessary for everyone to do everything, but to choose this essential point for our culture. I think I'm the only here the Dominican and the priest in this community that we see that not only the culture of Europe without religion, but we can join everything together. Also, the monastery could be a very big witness to create the common heritage.
thank you very much, because at once, at the first presentation Dr. Wachter has shown, it was put very clearly the question of clear and precise narrative for the EHL. So what, in your opinion, should be done or in which way you would develop such a clear message of Europeanness? Because you are extremely experienced how to work with your sites, how to work in your communities, how to communicate your values in the milieu you are working with. But still, as I have learned from your presentation, still there is a lack of the common European message.
I think a major challenge, or the next step that should be taken, besides labeling new sites, which is very important and necessary, because there are too few sites so far to get a critical number of sites to make to raise the importance in the public for the EHL. But I think the next step, besides that, should also be to make considerations on marketing issues. So how to transform the EHL into a brand, and what is the message of the brand. And each brand needs a very clear and concise message. So let's say one sentence. So if you are asked what is the EHL, what does it stand for, everybody of us should be able to answer in the same words in just one sentence, two sentences, and I think that's the only way for the future that the message of the EHL can be disseminated to the public.
And others' reflections? I was also impressed by your presentation, Sarah, because you emphasized the issue of borders as a crucial one. The borders we are trying to overtake, we are trying to think in the transnational or trans-border, let's say, way, so you are dealing with this in your everyday work. What is your impression?
About Europeness, you mean?
Yes, and about the borders, because we are limited. We are limited within our sites, and what we are looking for is something trans-border in the message as well, as a European heritage label.
Yeah, I think that the point is that you need to realize that you have a border to go beyond that border. So the point of the first quotation was that we have borders, and we need to realize that, because it's the only way to shatter actually the borders. And our institution is working on that, also emphasizing the fact that these borders changed over time, so it's still changing. So we don't have fixed borders. And I think it's important for Europe as well. And for instance, what I was thinking is that probably a way to construct, I wouldn't say a one narrative, but a coherent narrative, because I imagine European Heritage Label as a very clever television series. You know, there isn't one storyline. There are many storylines that just intertwine together in some weird ways sometimes. And I think that one way to make this television series work better, it would be to work on the significance and on the meaning of Europeness itself. So maybe create some room for research, or just to share some experience on research about European history and about what Europeanness mean, and probably, I wouldn't say a workshop, but it would be interesting to work among the different sites on the Europeanness. So if we have an awareness on the Europeanness, we can work on that significance for our site as well. I don't know if I make myself clear.
Yes, you did so. There are questions in the audience. Who is going to? Mrs. Snezhka Kwedlik-Mihailovic. Europa Nostra.
Yeah.
Professor Shonkoy first.
Sorry, I got the microphone, but I...
Yeah. So then Mrs. Kwedlik-Mihailovic.
Okay, thank you so much. First, I'm Gabor Shonkoy from the panel, and I'd like to thank all the 5 representatives for the dedication for the European Heritage Label. The presentations were excellent. And actually, I was thinking about talking about borders and how to create a brand on different levels. Of course, I totally agree that the European Commission need to invest in the branding and the institutionalization of the European Heritage Label. But I'd like also to ask you, and especially 2 sites, how to do this branding on a lower level between the sites, because we could see the whole history of Europe in 5 moments. But if you think about the first one, Carnuntum, and the last one, Sopron, time-wise they are separated by 1,600 years or so, but geographically they are separated by 35 kilometers. They are very close to each other. So could you give any idea how the 2 of that, because 2 of them are tell a story about a border, how to cross a border, how to keep a border. Do you see it's possible that the 2 are represented together, just profit from the nearness of the 2 sites? Because that can, this is just on the spur of the moment, because there are 38 sites and we only seen 5, but it was excellent, and I congratulate the organizers that you were put together. So do you see any possibility just for these 2 sites, because of this geographical nearness, to represent European Heritage Label together for a school trip, for example? Thank you.
Yeah, I would like to ask Dr. Christian Rummer's help, because he's the manager of the European Heritage Label site. Yeah.
May I give some remarks on the question? Yeah, of course, but I think what should be done is, I think everything depends on the common narrative. I think we all should invest time to work on the narrative of the interpretation of borders. What do we understand? What do we think about the borders? And the second step is to create programs, educational programs, joint programs. We are at the moment already working together, or exchange with the Imperial Palace in Vienna. So exchange of experiences and knowledge takes place already. But I think the vision should be, let's say, common educational programs on a common sense of understanding of borders, of Europeanness, and then I think then it makes sense to organize also touristic programs. So that's the vision, yeah, of course. But I think that takes time. It has to start. But I think the first step is to come to a common understanding of DHL, of what makes Europe. What is Europe? What are the common values of Europe? What is our understanding of border? And the next step is to create the programs.
And let us answer a little bit to Mr. Mayor of Sopron.
Thank you very much. We are close to each other, to Vienna and Carnuntum and Sopron, and I think we could work together. We have to search the common narrative, and that's the way I think. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Mrs. Snežka Kvedlik-Mihailovic, Europa Nostra.
Yeah, thank you. I'm also impressed by all those presentations, and indeed, when you put all those sides together, you are a great force. And that we are all a great force, and that's why this network idea, and I was delighted to hear from Michel Magnier yesterday that there will be a tender and that the Commission is willing to invest, is in fact making more out of putting you all together and exchanging, etc. That's one remark I want to say. But there is a question that I wanted to ask you all. You mentioned the title of the book, Europe, Our History. But there is also the title, Europe, Our Future. Mm-hmm. And we are currently ahead of us, ahead of the European elections. We're going to all have, in all countries, in all places, a debate on Europe. And this debate on the future of Europe is very much alive. And the identity questions are very much in the sort of heat of that debate. And as you know, there are some sort of consultations citoyennes, the citizens' dialogues on Europe are organized everywhere. And I was always thinking whether we should not be thinking of using heritage sites, and in particularly the sites that have the European Heritage label, because they tell a story, a certain story of this Europeanness that we are talking about. Whether you would not consider that your sites would be a perfect locations also to organize such citizens' dialogues on the future of Europe, because these are the places where the spirit of Europe, when there is a sense of place. Most of the time now, these discussions are organized in uninspiring places without any history, without any sense of place, and putting people to talk about the future of Europe, facing the current challenges in your sites of other also heritage sites with a special meaning. I wonder whether that would not be a very original and very good use of also this instrument and sort of European heritage places. So I just would like to know your reflection, whether you see that you could take part in such a way by providing a suitable spiritual, also I would say intellectual background for such a debate. And I was especially, of course, triggered by this pan-European picnic idea, because it was a wonderful, moving story 30 years ago, the borders coming down and accepting refugees. And in your country now, you have the borders between your country and mine. There is now a new border precisely to stop the refugees come in. So, the question of borders and questions on some issues, we are going backwards in sort of European sort of developments. And so I really see your places as beacons of hope and inspiration in that debate to have Europe also having a future, not only a past.
May I react a little bit? I think it's a very good idea, and from perspective of Kaunas, and I would say that when you are discussing such topic of narrative, Kaunas is a very good case, because what we are talking about in Kaunas, it's the concept of modernity, which is universal, with optimism, with all these keywords. And it have local manifestations. So again, we have the same type of discussion after 100 years. It's about something which is universal, it's Europe, and some local manifestations. So I think it's a really good idea, and it's, in a way, it's really connected.
Yes, please, another question.
Thank you very much. Please allow me to return to the problematic of Sopron and Carnuntum. I could mention and remind you that although Sopron was a Roman town under the name of Scarbantia, not only Carnuntum. And both laid along a very important route, the Amber route, beginning from the Neolithicum. And as Sopron was on the border of the Iron Curtain, and in the modern times, Carnuntum was on the line of the Iron Curtain of the Roman Empire for some centuries. And so it's a very interesting problematic. And now there is a broad international program to create a World Heritage from the Roman limes. And 9 European countries are involved and work together. And one of them, at the moment, not a member of the European Community, Serbia. Otherwise, the line of the Rhine and the Danube will be, within some years, fully a common World Heritage Site. What does it mean? Not only the work on it internationally, but also a creation of a touristic way or a limes road along these rivers. It is in functioning already. And also thousands of communities and civil groups are involved in this program in all these countries from Netherlands to Romania. So it is a very important thing also for Europe, not also as a World Heritage Site. So it would be my question to you. Soon the ICOMOS will make evaluation on this Danube Limes program also in Carnuntum. What is your opinion? What are the differences or connections between the European Heritage Label projects and World Heritage projects, for example, in Carnuntum?
I think, as I said in my presentation, I think the EHL is much more challenging to communicate and from its idea than the World Heritage. I think the World Heritage is more easier to communicate, to explain than the EHL. But for the state of Carnuntum, we are in a close cooperation with the other limes sites along in Germany as well, in Slovakia and Hungary, because the challenge is for the World Heritage to explain the limes, that the limes in the region of Austria and Hungary wasn't Iron Curtain. It was just like a Schengen border with exchange of knowledge, of goods, and Carnuntum, the city, flourished because it was at the crossroads of the limes and the Amber Road. So that's the story we would like to tell, and there a close connection to the pan-European picnic, to overcome borders or to redefine borders. I think that's the differences. I think the World Heritage is easier to explain to the public. I think the EHL is more challenging, but I think it has more power if it gets more known. I think it gets more power, and all those actual questions. What is Europe? Why do we need Europe, a common Europe? I think once the EHL is better known in the public, the EHL sites can serve as examples for why we need the European Union.
Mrs. Csilla Hegedűs.
I would like to thank you and to congratulate you for not only for your excellent presentation, but also for the very good quality application that you have sent us, because otherwise you wouldn't be here having the EHL label. Now, I have a number of questions because the jury always is delighted, first of all, to meet you face to face and to see how you implemented the work program that we so carefully scrutinized while debating what your application. So, question number one would be, what were the challenges while trying to implement the work program that you received the European Heritage Label for? And the second is whether, all of you have, as I said, submitted very good applications. So would you be ready to help other applicants who would like to follow in your footsteps? Because the network is not just a lovely thing and a new bubble to play with. It's actually something that we very hardly work for to exist as the label jury. And we would like to know your opinion, how you see your role in helping others to really make this network to work. Thank you very much.
Probably I could start with the answer with a few remarks from Kaunas about challenges. Actually, when we are talking about Kaunas, about this independence period, about this heritage, it is very strong national narrative. We are talking about new Republic of Lithuania, about the place where modern Lithuania was born. So it's very tempting to present this narrative from a perspective, just from national perspective. And the big challenge is to find aspects which is European and to find them not on intellectual level, which we can discuss in conference auditoriums, but to find in everyday life. And I think we are doing this little by little.
Maybe from my part, because Lublin is situated in the eastern part of the Poland, we are between the Western civilization and the countries after the division, the partition. I think that our challenge is, first of all, the dialogue between the cultures, because the Union of Lublin was the union of not only two countries, many nations. That means now the effort from our side maybe to do a good dialogue with the countries from the East. We do this because very often, many times a year, 3-4 times, we organize the dialogue meetings in the Basilica, not only with the Jewish tradition and culture, also I remember there was a meeting with Islam, there was also a meeting with the Orthodox Church, and I think that our purpose, aim, and possibilities in Lublin is just this dialogue. And then this is the first question. And the second question, if we can help, we organize together the three sides. The cooperation is very good in Lublin. I think there is no problem if you help other people to do the applications. But it not belongs only to me, but to the municipality of Lublin.
Yes, please.
Hello, my name is Leena Marsio. I work for the Finnish Heritage Agency. Thank you for the excellent presentations. Finland is one of the countries considering to be part of the label, and I think this is just the perfect chance to be on a study trip here for 3 days. So thank you all for the good, honest, frank presentations. My question to you would be that what is the main benefit of being a European Heritage Label site? Why would you recommend it to the Finnish heritage communities or institutions?
I think I've already said that in some ways. The main benefit to have the European Heritage Label is that you have the occasion to think outside the box of your institution first. So we are an history institution, but we can be something else. For instance, for the first time in our career, we thought that we could also be a political space and that we don't have to be afraid of this word. Political is a nice word, although politics is not very bright at the moment in many countries in Europe. And so I think that this is a real benefit for an institution to think different. And not only about Europeness and about big topic, but also to think about the institution itself. For instance, and I'm linking to the previous question, our first challenge was to explain to others in the institution what the label was and what it means. And it's not easy, because sometimes people are, oh, do we have a European Heritage Label? And we are not a massive institution, we are big, but not that big, which means that we are still working on the awareness of the label inside the institution. Because if we don't realize that inside the institution, we can't be very successful in the network either. And this is the second benefit, in my opinion, that you can really work with others. It's pointless to play alone in this case, in my opinion, and we've never been involved in a big European project. Only just we had few postdoc, a few, the Europeana project and things like that. But if you want to think big, you have to be part of something different. That's it.
One thing to add, from my point of view, that sometimes in Europe we listen that for example, the religion should be a bit, this is the personal thing, but our example is a good example that we can unite to join together the religion or as the culture events. And there is no problem, the people comes to us and thanks to this can learn a lot of things. The spirituality, also the cultural heritage. I think this is the benefit.
For our side of Carnuntum, I can say we benefited on the one hand in an intangible way. So the EHL forces you to redefine your narrative, your storytelling. So you have to sharpen your communication and education. But it also put us into a status of greater importance, and you have a more powerful role in negotiations with politicians for further investments. And for the case of Carnuntum, we could convince the politicians that they invest further 2 million euros in the improvement of the site. So it has, and it also, I think, it redefines your own understanding. I think it widens your horizon, I think.
In case of Kaunas, I think it's very important on few levels, on governmental level and of course local level. So on governmental level, I would say that it's very important that European Heritage Label it's more about intangible. If UNESCO World Heritage List is about authenticity, about all the tangible aspects. So we are talking about intangible, and it helps to include this idea of intangible in official discourse, which is really important, I guess. From the perspective of local residents, I think it's also very important that European Heritage Label gives a background for the discussion about this polyphonic identities or narratives. Just from practical point of view, it's really nice to hear that in Kaunas, as already mentioned, we have 42 buildings, which is carries the duty to be European Heritage Label, but now the people come to my municipality and ask, couldn't we be included as well? So it means that that we like to be a part of this narrative, and it's really nice to hear from these people.
Thank you so much.
I think as a memorial park, our biggest benefit is that we can cooperate with other sites, and the European Heritage Label site, the European Heritage Label basically provides us the opportunity to present the former events for even the younger generations. Thank you.
Gloria.
Yeah, very shortly, I'm Gloria Lorenzo. I am the person responsible for this initiative at the European Commission. We would like to thank all the sides that have spoken about the benefits of participating, but I think that we are going in the right direction if Finland is thinking about participating in this scheme, because it means somehow it's proven useful, because it's a voluntary scheme. Member states do not have to participate, they only do it if they want, and some of the countries didn't want to participate at the very beginning. A few years later, we already have Finland thinking about participating, so I think that's already a success. It means that there is definitely something which is attracting others, and we need to keep on working in that direction.
Thank you so much for the discussion. I don't want to end it up. I just need to put a dot on it. But I am really, really happy because I feel that the mission of the ICC is fulfilled. I have the feeling that the distant relatives of one family has met for the first time together and started to tell their own stories, but also build a common family story. So that's why I'm really happy about what had happened this morning, and I am really impressed with the proposal of Mrs. Kvedlik-Mihailovic, because I imagine that the European Heritage Label landed in some size, because it was judged in a very wise panel of experts in Brussels and landed in some places, and it was this top-down actions, and we were seeking for the ideas for the bottom-up actions, and this idea of citizen discussions on European issues, which could be inspired by the meaning of the place, is one of the most important proposals. So thank you very much for this. So once again, thanks you very, very much. And now it's time for Mrs. Gloria Lorenzo to tell us a little bit more in practice what European Heritage Label sites could do together. Thank you.
So good afternoon. I've already introduced myself. I've taken over from Gérald Collot, that I guess most of you know, the European Heritage Label Action. I'd like to give you some background. Some of you have found me during the coffee breaks and asked me where do I come from and what I've done. I've been working in the European Commission for 16 years now. I've been working on electronic services first as a project officer. Then I've been working on entrepreneurship. And since 4 years ago, I've been working in the cultural unit, dealing with the European Capitals of Culture, and now with European Heritage Label. I've got a background in economics and finance, and also a degree in history, so the European Heritage Label sometimes touches me quite a lot. If you have any questions about my background, I'll be very, very happy to answer those during the lunch break. I have to apologize in advance. My presentation is going to be far more boring than the ones we've seen today. Unfortunately, I represent an institution, and what I am going to talk about is very technical in a way. I'm going to try to be very short, because what I would like from you is to hear your comments, to have your questions, and to gather as many inputs as I can for improving the action in the future. And I think that, as we've spoken several times yesterday and today, this is not as much as a top-down initiative as it looks like, because it has the logo of the European Union on it, but it's bottom-up. I mean, it's the sites who ask, who develop a program, and it's from the sites and from the ground where we need to take all our initiatives to improve the schemes well. So I'm going to talk about the networking of the EHL sites. Michel Magnier mentioned yesterday that there is a call for proposals that it's going to be published for hopefully today or else tomorrow. We've been working on it during the summer. This is going to be the main part of my presentation, and probably it's going to also gather the main part of the questions. I'm going to be brief on it, because if you haven't seen the text, I understand it's very difficult to put questions through, and if I need to tell you what's in the text, then it could take us a really long time. So I'm just going to give a few hints on what it is going to look like, and I'll be happy to answer your questions after that. And I also want to talk a little bit about communication that has been mentioned a lot of times yesterday and today. The need for more communication to get the initiative better known, both at the European level but also on the ground. So I think, so I want to mention a couple of initiatives that are going on, but also to gather your input, your suggestions on what we could do in the future. And then I'll briefly mention Discovery EU. I'll let you know what it is afterwards. Well, yesterday, Michel mentioned the 4 C's. Somebody mentioned the 5th C, which I understood was credibility, and this is what we are all working towards, building a strong credibility for this action. But he mentioned the need for more and better communication on the European heritage level. He mentioned the cooperation among the sites in order to bring the action forward. The capacity building, which has 2 components. One is linked to what was said before, to this thinking out of the box, to going outwards in your interpretations, but also in being able to gather funding and to participate in more projects. And I think for most of the sites that might be really challenging, and targeted actions to improve the capacity of going out, of finding contacts, and putting together a project is probably a good thing as well. And the other C is Creative Europe. That's the program of the European Union to finance culture. I realize that there might be interpretation. I'm going to slow down. Is the program for financing culture, is the program which actually runs the European Heritage Label Initiative, and is where most of the opportunities for funding for the sites are going to appear. It's not the only one, though. There might be possibilities both under national funds, but also under other European initiatives. But this one is going to be the biggest pool of funding for culture in Europe. So it's only natural that we are going to try to fund most of our opportunities here. So, as I said, we are publishing a call for proposals. Zsuzsanna mentioned a call for tender. There is a big difference between the two, and I would like to explain a little bit why we are doing a call for proposals. The main difference between a call for tender and a call for proposals is that when you speak about a tender, we are buying something. We want something to get done. We've got a very clear idea of what we want. We go and we ask somebody to do it for us because we either don't have the means, the capacity, or the technical assets to carry out the action. And whatever comes out from that belongs to the Commission. It's like we buy a chair, but the chair is ours. That makes quite a lot of sense. When we speak about a call for proposals, what we do is we give out broad objectives that are to be achieved with the project. And sometimes, depending on the type of call, a few tasks that are unavoidable, that need to be done in order to get to those objectives. But we want the bottom-up approach. We want the people who actually is going to run the project to come and propose. If we want to promote networking, this is how we would go about it. So it's, in that sense, it's less, how can I say, it's less strict. I mean, we don't ask for specific things to be done. We just give a broad framework, and we want you to let us know how you see this happening. And then the idea is to evaluate those and see what is the best solution to get to this point. So we have of course, taken this bottom-up approach because it's the only natural way to get the European heritage sites to network, is asking them, how do you see your own networking? What are the activities you think will benefit you in order to achieve these objectives? And I've listed them here. Of course, we want to promote networking, but we also want the sites to work jointly on educational programs, on other actions, targeting maybe communication, targeting maybe education, that they would like to do together. For those who are familiar with the action, the European Heritage Label itself has few objectives that the sites should try to achieve. And those joint projects should go in that direction. So this should help the sites to achieve their own objectives. We would like also to increase the capacity of the sites to collaborate and to gather funding. So, the call for the networks has been mentioned. I know it was very frustrating to not to be able to obtain that funding. Unfortunately, Creative Europe calls are really, really, really competitive. So there is a lot of people asking for funding and very little funding to be distributed. So there is a lot of competition, and the idea is to help the site as much as possible to be in a good position to run for this, to compete for this funding. And we would also like to improve the visibility of the action and of the sites themselves. And this has been coming back all the time during yesterday's and today's discussion. It's very important to do more promotion, both at the European level, but also at the local level. So we need to make sure that people want to go. I mean, after the presentation we've seen, I want to go to all of those sites. I think they really look so good. So we need to find a means to attract all those visitors, because at the end of the day, that is what is gonna make our heritage living, but also sustainable, and it's very important to ensure sustainability. So we need to work in that direction. So the call, as I said, defines a few tasks to be done, but then it's up to the proposers to say, okay, this is how I'm gonna do it. So the first one is to define the network itself. So which kind of network would the heritage sites like to have? What is this network supposed to do for them? How are they contributing? What is the strategy? And how is it going to be sustained in the future? So there is a need to sit down and talk about all those things, and this call for proposals, this project could allow to do that. There is a need to engage the sites. That was mentioned by Benedict yesterday. Of course, you can't, the sites can't network unless they want to network. So there is an interest to involve and engage the sites into the networking. I mentioned beneficiaries and not beneficiaries. I'll explain that a little bit later. We need communication, better communication and more communication. So we need a common website where all the sites can be gathered. Of course, we do have an institutional website, but how does that reach the general public? How does that reach the people we would like to reach? It's difficult. We are an institution, so we've got institutional information about what it is. So we need a site which is your site, where the sites can be explained, can be linked together, and can inform about their own activities. That's important. You've got activities. You want the others to know what you're doing. You want the public to know what you're doing. So it's important to develop a proper communication, but also an internal communication tool. So we want you to interact, but how do you interact? You send an email, do you get an answer? The idea here is to put together a site where you can exchange easily. There is somebody leaving, there is somebody coming into the different sites. That could be easier with an exchange tool that allows you to communicate, to gather, to develop projects and so on in an easy way. And also we need to develop other communication strategies. It has been said, but we might think about trying to reach out to travel guides to show prominently, this is a European heritage site. We might want to target magazines saying, National Geographic saying, these are the European heritage sites. That has happened in the past, but we probably need to go a little bit further. It has happened with European Capitals of Culture, and it was a great idea. So, there are a number of those. That might also be something we could target, but we need to develop a proper communication strategy which goes beyond the institutional, goes far beyond the institutional. You also need to exchange, to have tutoring, to meet. This also has been said several times. It has been mentioned as one of the benefits of having the label, and this is the opportunity to make it happen. But once again, it is up to the sites to decide how they want to network. Do we want to network digitally, virtually? Do we want to network in person, half and half? Do we want to have workshops where we exchange on best practices? Do we want to have somebody coming and telling us how we can improve specific things? There are a lot of ways of building up capacity. And I think we've put a number of those in there: exchanges, study visits. Anything can work. It's we need you to decide what would work best for yourselves. Also, as I've mentioned that before, joint projects and also individual projects that might help. So we've already said that the label itself does not have any financing, but this project could give the opportunity to give some funding. We need to see this project as a pilot action, so we try for the first time to put together a network. We need to see how it works and how to make it sustainable. So it's a moment also to try different things, and then if it doesn't work, then let's go in another direction. So this way we've also foreseen some financial support to maybe sites that are not going to be direct beneficiaries of the action, but that still want to network. This is linked to engagement on the one hand. There are some sites might be skeptic of participating in a European project. Some of them, because of their legal structure, have limits, and it makes it very difficult for them to participate in a European project directly. So there are a number of situations out of 38 sites, plus the sites which are going to be added up next year. So this is a means for us to reach to those sites which might not be able to sign a contract. And then we would like also an annual conference. The Commission is organizing those European Heritage Label Days once a year to try to gather the people together. But once again, this could be better organized by the network itself, where the needs, where the agenda can be structured towards your needs instead of towards my needs, which are in this context a little bit irrelevant. So we've set a few conditions on who can apply, who can be eligible to get this grant. Of course, that was mentioned by, I can't remember if it was Benedict or Chilla, but somebody mentioned that there is, of course, it needs to be somebody, an entity which has a very strong link with the European Heritage Label. It doesn't mean that it has to be a site, but it has to be an entity which is close enough, so who can gather, engage the sites, and also be aware enough of the needs of those sites in terms of communication, capacity building, networking. It has to be in a participating country in Creative Europe. That's a legal constraint because it's Creative Europe which is financing it, so it cannot finance entities which are set in countries outside the participating countries. But it also needs to include at least 10 sites. Why? There won't be any network if the sites are not engaged. So we need to gather a sufficient number of sites to start working together and then engage the others. So it is very important that there are a number of sites that are already interested in networking. As far as I could see, that's not going to be a problem. I think that the interest of our networking is very strong, and it will be fairly easy to gather 10 sites. So it will be what we call a consortium. So it will be a number of entities getting together. It is important to know as well that it is not limited to the sites. You might want to have a communication specialist that is part of the consortium because maybe the sites do not have this capacity to develop a strategy. There are two ways this can be done. So one is subcontracting this to a specialized agency. The other one is to have an entity which is good in communication to participate into the project. So there are different ways of doing that. Now it's up to you sites to get together and see who do I need to make this network working. And of course they have to be active in the cultural and creative sectors. That's also linked to the Creative Europe. I mean, you can't really work with a cultural sector unless you know what it is about. So it's important that we keep on that. This was mentioned by Michelle yesterday as well, but we've got a budget of 500,000 euros, which is going to last for 20 months. So there is a lot of room to do things, and I strongly encourage sites to take advantage of this opportunity. Take advantage of it. It's a good budget. It gives the opportunity to try things. It gives the opportunity to give a little bit of a boost to the action, and we hope that's what's going to happen. It has a financing of 80% of the costs. So of course there is an investment from the applicants, from the beneficiaries into the action as well. Because at the end of the day, it's going to come back to them. The Commission does not own the results of a project under a call for proposals. The deadline is going to be in January. There is plenty of time, though. It's plenty of time, but short time. I mean, putting together a proposal is not as easy as it sounds. But still, there is time for discussion, time to get together, time to prepare. Evaluation is going to happen in January, February, and we hope the results are going to be out in March, if everything goes as we planned. I just want to go back to the eligible applicants. I've mentioned this financial contribution to third parties. If we have a minimum of 10 sites, let's say we've got 15 or 16, that's for me an ideal situation. There will be sites which are not going to be part of the proposal itself, but still are going to network, and that's why I said beneficiaries or not beneficiaries. What we understand as a beneficiary is an entity who actually signs a grant agreement with the Commission. A third party is a European Heritage Label site that does not participate as a beneficiary. But that's technical, so I just wanted to mention that to make sure that we understand that even if not all of the sites are part of the agreement, there are still networking opportunities for those who do not directly participate in the action, and I think that's important. For the rest, it's technical and can be solved on the level of written questions. The call has not been published yet. It's probably going to be out today or tomorrow, but for a matter of equal treatment and transparency, any questions about the call should be addressed in writing to this entity. It is, of course, in the text of the call for proposal, so don't worry, all the information is going to be together in the document. The idea is that when you put a question through, it's going to be answered for everybody. It's going to be published so everybody can have access to the same information. That's a transparency principle that the Commission is very keen in keeping. So, before I go to other communication activities, do you have questions on the call for proposals? Because it's maybe better to...
Yeah, thank you. Charles Wagenhofer. For the ones that don't know me, I represent the Imperial Palace, Vienna. So we was the applicant for the last network application. And the first thing what I saw is that so far as I see that program, we have a competition in it. So we should go for more than one application in that call. Last time we was talking about to do it together. So at the end, maybe we just have one application for this network, including all the sites. So do it fit to the application then? Because otherwise we had the problem that we make competition within our group, and it doesn't make sense for me, to be honest. And the second thing is, because it was a strange thing last time for the call for the network, we was the only applicant and had to sign this contract. And the others was just informed more or less, and we had to do some applications in the application for the others. They don't know already exactly what it was, but the main thing was clear. So do we have a multi-beneficiary contract in that case? That's my main question. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. On the number of proposals that can get through, there is only one proposal is going to be awarded. That makes a lot of sense because we only want one network to happen. We don't want more than one. The institutions have financial constraints that are very strong. I'm pretty sure you know that. And one of them is that, a call for proposals needs to be open as it happens. There could be more than one proposal with 10 sites. Yeah, there could be. Whether that's something that we would wish, well, I mean, you said it. I mean, it's for you side, so you said it. If there is more than one, one is going to be chosen. And then, in any case, for any of the proposals, everybody has to explain how the sites are going to be engaged, the other sites. Of course, you've got 10 in your proposal. You need to explain how you're going to engage the others into networking. So that the fact that it's an open call means that there are some activities that somebody else, which is not a site, could do. I mean, I could organize workshops and then try to engage you to come. I need a strong case to engage you to come into my workshop like that, but I might be, I might be a sufficiently strong entity as to engage the sites, even if I'm not a site myself. So what happens with the calls for proposals is that you don't know what's going to be proposed. You just set guidelines, and then you see what happens. For the multi-beneficiary, the idea is it's going to be a multi-beneficiary grant because we need at least 10 sites, so that makes it multi-beneficiary. Now, there is a possibility, so there are two possibilities, but that's technical. One is to give a mandate to one of the entities to sign in behalf of all the others, but at the end of the day, all the entities that appear in the contract are responsible for carrying out the action. So there is a joint responsibility. The other possibility, which I think it's difficult in this case, but might happen in other cases, is that those entities get together and form an entity that is going to be a single beneficiary. But as I said, that comes from the financial regulation. It probably happens, for example, in research. I don't really see it happening in the cultural sector, but it's still legally a possibility. So don't be surprised to see in the text that we speak about a single entity application, but which conditions are a little bit particular and seems more targeting, another world which is not ours. That's what I could say. But still, it's a possibility and legally might work. About the network hall, yeah, I mean, the network hall that was applied for has very specific conditions, like number of members, like there is one entity representing the network. Well, you know, each call for proposal has its own. So in this case, it's clearly a multi-beneficiary grant. No more questions? No more questions for the call. Maybe it will come while, you know, after you've a little bit reflected on the conditions and what do we intend to do. I'll be also happy to hear from you. I mean, if you think this is something which is suitable for the sites for networking, whether you see we've missed strong elements in there, so that can be taken into account at a further stage. I'll be also happy to hear your suggestions at the end. So I said that we would also talk about communication. We've got, I mean, the Commission puts in place several communication tools, as I said, more on an institutional level, and those include the plaque which is given to the sites when they are awarded the label, a video which is made that is posted on our website to explain what the site is about. At the time we had some postcards, and now we've got the European Heritage Label exhibition that you can see where we have our coffee breaks and lunches, and which is a very, very nice exhibition with lovely pictures and a short description of each of the sites. This exhibition is offered, I mean, has already been circulating in a number of places, and now it's offered on a national level to the countries with somebody coordinating the circulation of this activity. It's already done it for several countries. It has been done for the Imperial Palace. If I remember well, there must be 6 or 7 exhibitions which are already or produced or in production, and we still have room for a few more. We are discussing with Spain about the possibility of having an exhibition going around there, Germany, and also Poland. We are also discussing that. In principle, the idea is that the national coordinator takes over. Sometimes the national coordinators do not have the capacity to deal with the managing of this exhibition, and in that case, we turn ourselves to the sites to see if there is a site that could be willing to take over the coordination. And I believe for Poland, it was Lublin, but I'm not sure the person responsible for that has come to this conference, so something we'll keep on discussing. If anybody has not been contacted for this exhibition and could be interested, just let us know to see what we could do. Further to this, the Commission has its own copy of the exhibition with text in English and French that can also be sent. I'm thinking about Finland, if you would like to have the exhibition and have a first hint of what it looks like. We've got one exhibition that we can lend in order to be circulated. There is an indoors and an outdoors version, depending on what you would like to do with it. So don't hesitate to send me an email or to talk to me if anybody is still missing from the list. Then another initiative that is not ours, I can take the credit for that, it comes from the Imperial Palace. I think you've already heard about it at some point. It's a memory game with the pictures of the European Heritage Label sites. So the idea is to use the same pictures from the exhibition to do this game, which I think it's a great idea because they are there, because they've been chosen, they've been accepted. We have some doubts about the rights of the pictures, and I would like to invite the sites that are present here to contact me if the Commission does not have the rights, so we can try to arrange that. And further to this, I'll send an email to the sites which are not here in order to try to solve this issue of the rights. But that's the idea for the time being. I invite the Imperial Palace to speak further about this if there are any questions, but all in all, I think this was already unknown information, so I'm not discovering much. And the last initiative I'd like to talk to you about is Discover EU, I've sent an email last week or the week before about Discover EU. This is a new initiative from the European Parliament. It's a pilot project that the Commission is implementing, and it gives the opportunity to the young people turning 18 to travel around Europe, and they get a free Interrail ticket. You probably all remember the Interrail initiative, where you could travel very cheap by train in Europe. Well, that's still going on, so it's a good thing shouldn't be stopped. And now it is offered to those turning 18 to go and visit Europe. And they are very, very active in social media because that's where people turning 18 is going to move and look for information. So what they would like from the European heritage sites is, if you've got events, if you've got things which are targeting that age range, 18, to send the information to the Discover EU team that will post it in the Facebook page, and so you'll get, luckily, a flood of 18 years old people coming to your site and learning about Europe and so on. I think it's a nice initiative. There has been a first wave that has been traveling during the summer. There is a second wave which is going to come in the next months. And I think for you as well, it's also a good mean to post your events, and also start with this communication, very targeted communication in social media. If you have any questions about Discover EU, I have to admit this is a new initiative, so I can't tell much more, but I can put you in contact with the Discover EU team, who would be glad to answer your questions. So to finish, as I'm new to this initiative, you've got my contact details. Well, in the current world, you just have to Google me and probably find my contact details, and maybe me speaking in other events that happens. I sometimes Google myself to see what's going on, and I find myself speaking in YouTube. And you've got my direct phone number. If you need anything from me, I'll be available for my new action, my new constituency, which is the European Heritage Label sites. And that's it. That's it.